I was never brave enough to start it myself. Do I have a job? I like this one. I left this question to the end because I didn't know how I wanted to answer it. Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda and this is Birch and Lily, where I talk about all sorts of fun, crafty goodness. Today is a really fun Q&A episode. I haven't done one of these in years, honestly. So I thought it would be fun to sit down and film one today. I allowed you guys to ask me questions all sorts of places. I talked about it in last podcast episode. I had a poll up on, or not a poll, a question box up on Instagram. So I pulled all those questions and we're gonna go through them today. Before we jump on in though, there are a few places you can find me on the internet. birchandlilyfaber.com is my main website, which will be having an update this Sunday, October 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I've been sharing all of the colorways and all that sort of fun stuff on my Instagram as well as on YouTube Shorts. So make sure you check that out. You can also find me on Instagram at birch.and.lily. And yeah, I think I have like screenshotted all of these questions. I think I'll kind of go through them and answer kind of in categories. I didn't really sort them, but I figure if I go through and kind of cross them out as I go, I can probably keep track of it relatively decently. And I'm just going to be knitting while we chat and answer some of your questions. So the first question, there were a couple that were quite similar, so this happened a couple times, so I kind of combined all of them. The question asks, how did you get into being a test knitter? Someone else also asked what prompted me into getting into test knitting in such a big way. So I thought, yeah, those kind of worked quite well together. And there's a couple reasons. The main reason I got into test knitting, I think first off, was just wanting to get patterns ahead of time. I just liked the idea of knitting things before other people, and I feel like that's evolved now. I really love the process of test knitting. I love the deadlines of test knitting. I love working with designers and learning new techniques and new styles and being able to put my input into like maybe a new technique I've never done is worded slightly confusing, and so I can help the designer in that way. I just really enjoy the whole aspect of it, and so I don't know if there's like, I think I got into it first off because I wanted to get the patterns ahead of time and I was excited about the possibility of a free pattern for testing and all that sort of stuff, but I think I've stuck around with it because I just love the whole process of it. It feels like a job in a way. It's fun. I love the community behind it. I love getting to chat with other makers and all work on the same project together, and it's kind of like a tiny little make-along or knit-along in a way. I don't know. I think that's why I started, and now I do it so much because of how fun it is for me. Because I want to do it so much, it's forced me to become quite organized with it, which is good because, as you can see if you've watched some of my podcast episodes before, I definitely have a lot going on at once, and so I have to be organized and on a schedule, and I like that, especially with where I am in my life right now, which we will get into later in the video, and it's really satisfying and rewarding to me. So yeah, that's me, basically the main reason, and I've just continued doing it because of that. And yeah, that's basically it. Nothing super crazy, but I've enjoyed it so much that I've continued doing it, and now it's become a big part of my day-to-day. On the same topic, I had a lot of people asking me, how do I become a test knitter? I think a lot of it is luck of the draw when you're starting out, but I think there's quite a few things that you can do to make yourself stand out. Obviously, if you have a larger presence on Instagram or YouTube, that's going to help a lot. But even if you don't, a lot of designers are looking for more beginner knitters or people who aren't as popular, I hate saying popular, but who don't have as big of a following. Designers look for people like that too, but there are a few things that you definitely need to be doing, even if you have a smaller following, if you want to be chosen. First, the main thing is photo quality. I take all my photos on my iPhone, so you don't need anything fancy to take the photos. For that matter, I'm recording on my iPhone right now, so you don't need anything fancy, but you do need to sit down and practice taking photos. It's taken me a lot of practice and trial and error to get the photos that I do, and sometimes they still don't look great. But yeah, if you scroll back on my Instagram, my first photos are not beautiful. But I've just, yeah, trial and error and practice. I find for myself, I shoot a lot of my photos in portrait mode. I really enjoy how it blurs out the background for me, and I obviously have played with that a lot and figured things out, but portrait mode I find a lot of success with. Obviously natural light. I do have umbrella lights that I use, but all of my modeled garment photos I take outside. I make sure that I take them later in the day so there's not like direct sunlight shining down on me, but there is sunlight. And yeah, photos are really, really important. I think being engaged on your Instagram, posting often, posting items that are like what you're applying for the test knit. Yeah, just, I think a level of engagement and just showing your knowledge in your skill as a knitter. And yeah, there's no real this is how to do it. Like, I will say now that I have a slightly larger following on Instagram, that helps me a lot, but when I started out I tested a lot of smaller things like socks, hats, kind of to get myself out there and to have a portfolio on my Instagram of items that I tested for designers. So then once I started applying for more garments, I feel like designers were more willing to take a chance on me because I had tested a lot of smaller items and had experience testing in that way. And then now it's kind of just ballooned out from there. So yeah, I hope that helps. I'm happy to answer more questions down in the comments if anyone has like more specific questions about testing. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, it's just kind of something I've started doing and it's fun. So one other test knitting specific question was, what is one factor that makes you knit or test knit a sweater? I love learning new things. So if there is something that looks different to me, unique to me, something that I haven't done before, that really intrigues me. Obviously I want it to be something as well that I feel like I'm going to enjoy wearing. When I first started out testing, I would say I kind of just jumped in if I thought it was pretty. I think I'm a little bit more picky about what I test now, and it has to be something that I know I'm going to wear. I don't particularly love yoked sweaters, so I don't really apply to yoked garment test knits anymore. I know I prefer raglans and drop shoulders. Actually, on that topic, that is another question I had. What is my favorite type of garment? Raglans or drop shoulders? I prefer the fit on me. I just don't like how yoked sweaters fit in my armpit area. I don't like the extra fabric, and I don't like how they ride up when you lift your arms up. That's basically it. Otherwise, yeah, not terribly picky about anything else. I just, don't like turtlenecks. Not a turtleneck fan, but usually that's something that's pretty adjustable. But otherwise, I like raglans and I like drop shoulders. But back to what makes me decide if I want to test knit something, yeah, other than like ensuring that it's something I'm going to enjoy, or if I see something, which hasn't happened in a while, but if I saw something that I knew someone close to me would love, obviously I would test it and then gift it to them. But yeah, just something that I love and I feel like I'm going to get somewhere out of. Obviously a lot of the stuff I've been knitting in the spring and the summer I haven't been able to wear, and now I have a large pile of knit garments that I'm going to be able to enjoy in the fall and winter, and I'm really excited about that. I get to dig through my pile and kind of rediscover some of the stuff that I created. I would also say I'm more of a cardigan and pullover person than I am a knit tank and tee person. I do knit some knit tees. I do prefer like not so form-fitting of tees, so something with a lot of positive ease, but I'm just not a tank person. Where I am in my life right now and how I feel about my body, I just don't feel comfortable in tank tops. So I prefer to knit cardigans and pullovers and tees because I also feel comfortable modeling those. And I feel like that's something that's really important as a test knitter, is being able to give really good high quality photos of my finished garment to the designer so that they can promote their brand new design and have lots of different garments knit up on different people, different body shapes that they can show off when they're promoting their design. So I want it to be something that I'm going to feel comfortable and beautiful in so that I can take good photos. But yeah, I think that's it. I don't think there's like one, yeah, not one specific thing, but maybe the biggest thing is I love to learn something new. So if it looks unique and like something I haven't done before, then that really intrigues me. What is your favorite weight of sweater to knit and wear? I feel like I have a different answer for both parts of that question. My favorite weight to knit is DK. I like the speed of how it knits, and I also like, I don't know, I like it doesn't hurt my hands as much as fingering weight. I feel like I have to take more breaks when I'm knitting fingering weight, where DK is a little bit more forgiving. And I like the look of DK still. I like worsted weight garments, but they're not my favorite because the yarn is, it looks chunky isn't the way to put it because it's not bulky white yarn, but the knitting looks a little bit chunkier, so I like how a DK weight garment looks and I like the speed of knitting it. But as for drape, I love a fingering weight garment. Every time I knit a fingering weight garment, the drape always makes me so happy. I don't know. There's just less weight to the garment, obviously, because it's a thinner strand of yarn, and so I don't know, it drapes on my body and fits so much different than a DK weight garment. I prefer knitting DK for the speed, but I like the wear and the feel of fingering weight garments, so those are usually my go-tos. This question: what fit issues do you have with sweaters, and what is your suggestion for addressing them? I don't usually have a lot of fit issues. No, and it's not, yeah, I don't usually have a lot of fit issues. I will have to adjust sleeve length sometimes. I think mostly though because I can get stitch gauge on a knit, but for me to get row gauge is really, really hard because I have to drop needle sizes a lot to be able to get stitch gauge. So for example, the pattern I'm knitting on right now, I believe calls for a 4.5 millimeter needle. Don't quote me on it. But I have to drop down to a 3 millimeter needle. The most common gauge I've found for DK weight garments is 20 stitches and then whatever the row gauge is. And yeah, most people use anywhere from like a 4 to a 5 millimeter needle to get the 20 stitches, and I have to use a 3 millimeter needle. So that usually messes with my row gauge a lot, which means I will have to either adjust the length of the sleeve, so either do more or less repeats on my sleeve. I'll never adjust decreases unless, like, say the pattern says to knit the sleeve to 17 inches and I'm not done the decreases yet and I'm already at 17 inches on the sleeve. I will just rapidly decrease those stitches evenly throughout the sleeve right before I go into the cuff, and that's how I solve that. And then if it has to do with body length or anything like that, say the pattern says to knit so many repeats, I just have to do all of that sort of stuff based off of measurements as opposed to repeats. So say the pattern says to knit 20 rows or until your garment measures 2 inches. I have to go 2 inches. I can't pay attention to the 20 rows because my row gauge is always off. So yeah, that's really the only issue I have. Otherwise, I tend to knit garments that have a lot of positive ease, so I usually don't have many fit issues otherwise. I know sometimes people will put like bust darts and things like that into their garments. I've never really felt the need for that. Yeah, mostly just I have gauge issues all the time. I know how to get to the gauge that I need now, but my row gauge is absolutely always off. So these ones all kind of work together again. So maybe I'll read all of them and then I'll kind of just start answering. When did you start knitting? Actually, I'll answer that first and then we'll go into all the other ones that kind of fit together. When did I start knitting? I don't know the exact date. The first time I knit, my mom taught me, and she just had navy blue yarn kicking around and I said I wanted to knit, and so I started knitting a garter stitch scarf. It didn't last very long. Then I got distracted by some other craft, didn't knit for a long time, and then I felt like doing it again and I pulled it out and I did some like ruffly scarf. I remember sitting on my great grandma's couch and knitting with her on this ruffly scarf, and I think she was making an afghan of sorts, and I got like halfway through that and then I got bored again. And then when I really picked up and started knitting was 2016. I had been crocheting for maybe a year. I'd made a lot of like those hexagon crocheted blankets. I love doing that, but I kept seeing all of these beautiful knit items on Instagram and wanted to make them so badly. And so I just picked up some knitting needles, picked up some, oh gosh, what yarn was it? Caron Simply Soft, and just started knitting. I made a lot of really awkwardly large hats, a lot of scarves, and then I started to see the world of knitting socks on Instagram, became absolutely obsessed with knitting socks. If you've watched older podcast episodes of mine, you would know how obsessed I was with knitting socks. And then I really only expanded like largely into garments in the past couple years. So yeah, I've kind of knit all throughout my life on and off. I have had to reteach myself somewhat every time I've picked it up. I would remember most of the concepts, but like casting on and that stuff was always hard when I would pick it back up again. But then, yeah, when I really got into it and when knitting really clicked for me was in 2016, and I have not stopped ever since. So with that answered, let's go into those ones that all kind of sound similar. My favorite color to knit with, this one says Desert Island Yarn Color and Project, and then all-time favorite hand-dyed colorway you've ever knit with. Could be your own or not. So favorite color, I love blues and I love purples. I tend to, as you can see, I tend to dye a lot of blues, less purples actually, but I found myself tending to dye a lot of blue yarn. I gravitate towards blue yarn a lot. A lot of items in my knit wardrobe are blues and purples, sometimes greens. I love a good olive green, but I think blue is like my absolute favorite. With that being said, oh gosh, favorite colorway I've ever knit with. That's hard. I'm going to think about that for a second and answer Desert Island Yarn Color and Project. So yarn, I think a DK weight. I think I would, if I had an endless supply of DK weight, that would be awesome. Even just a sweater quantity of DK weight I think would make me, well, I say that, but fingering weight might be nice too because it would last longer. Like if I knit a fingering weight sweater, it would take me longer. So maybe fingering weight actually, so that I had knitting on my desert island for longer. Granted, I'd be so bored that I would probably knit the sweater in like 2 weeks and then have no yarn anyways, so but I'll stick with fingering weight because I think it'll last me a little bit longer. Project, I would probably want to knit a sweater, or no, I'd want to knit a sweater. Probably a raglan. I love me a raglan. And color, something blue and purple, something variegated. Variegated is fun. I love knitting stitches with variegated yarn and like seeing the colors change throughout the piece, like all the stitches being different colors on my needles. So some sort of like variegated speckly blue and purple something. Favorite hand-dyed colorway I've knit with? Man, that's a hard one. I think, and I'm gonna say this one and I'm like ripping the project out that I'm making out of it, but I have something else in mind to make with it, and I have it here because I don't know why it's here. Fia from Explore Knits and Fibers. I love really beautiful like light pastel-y colors. I don't know how that's going to show up on camera. Like just beautiful washes of color that run throughout a project. I have not mastered dyeing really pastel-y beautiful colors either. I definitely tend to dye things that are brighter myself, so I think I admire someone who can dye really beautiful pastel-y colors. So this one, of course, I said I like purples and blues, and it's like a beige with really, really light blues and greens and purples throughout it. So I think Fia by Explore Knits and Fibers is my favorite. But yeah, anyone who can master creating a beautiful pastel-y color blows my mind because I cannot do it. Do I have a favorite designer? I have a few. I think, okay, if I think about like whose patterns I have the most of in my library on Ravelry, I think I would say Andrea Mowry or Rebecca Clow. I love Rebecca Clow. As you can see, I test knit almost all of her patterns these days. I'm trying to be a little controlled about it, so I haven't applied to a couple of the past ones, but Rebecca has beautiful, really classic, timeless, well-fitting garments. She also has a similar body type to me, so I feel like that makes the pieces that I knit of hers fit me even better. And then Andrea Mowry, again, she just has really classic, beautiful pieces as well. She does a lot of mosaic knitting. I like mosaic knitting because it gives the look of color work without having to do color work. I think Andrea Mowry, Rebecca Clow. I love the look of petite knit patterns, but I've never knit any petite knit patterns. Again, they're really classic and beautiful and timeless, but I don't know why I haven't knit any of them. Yeah, I'm going way past the favorite designer. I love Lindsay Fowler. I love Tori Yu. Trying to think who else I test for really often. I love Sarah Opie as well. But yeah, I think my favorite is tied between Andrea Mowry and Rebecca Clow. Okay, this one isn't really a question, but it made me laugh. Last episode on YouTube I had mentioned that my newest yarn collection is based off The Parent Trap, and someone also said that they also hid when the girls were piercing their ears in the cabin, and that made me laugh because I thought I was the only chicken who did not want to see that in the slightest, even though you don't even see it happen. You just know it's happening, and it just made me feel nauseous. So I would always hide under a blanket. So I thought that was funny. They just said, I wonder if anyone else had a similar experience to me and you, which made me laugh. Okay, what was my favorite and least favorite project I have completed? Least favorite, I feel bad saying this, but one of my first test knits, the pattern was just not made for my body type, and this was at the point in time where I was kind of just joining test knits without really knowing tons about garments, and so I knit the Gaia by, I can't remember what it is. I'll put it on the screen here. I'll pop a picture up too if I remember. But it just didn't fit me correctly. It was made, I think I might have picked the wrong size. I think I maybe should have picked a size up, which probably didn't help because it was a drop shoulder design, and I think the drop on the shoulder was not hitting low enough. So then it was too tight in the bust and too tight in the arms, and I love the yarn, but I don't wear the finished product because it doesn't fit me correctly. So I really should rip that out and re-knit something with that yarn. It's from like a really old collection. It's like a bluey, blue, fair color, like bluey, greeny. It was called, I think, April Showers. But yeah, it wasn't so much that I didn't like the pattern itself. It was fun to knit. It had some really cool lace on the sleeves. It just did not fit me well, and I should have known once I had split for the sleeves and tried it on and it didn't fit that it just wasn't going to fit, and just humbly bowed out of the test knit, or asked to knit a different size. That probably would have been a better choice than just leaving the poor designer high and dry. But yeah, it just didn't fit me correctly. So that was my least favorite, I think. And favorite? My most worn is my Mayberry cardigan. It was very fun to knit. I made a huge mistake on it and had to rip back and start over, so that was really hard. But once I got that fixed and got going again, and then like got past the point where I'd messed up, it was really fun. It's very, once you get into the like rhythm of Fisherman's Rib, it's really, really easy. So it was a nice like sitting outside on the patio over the spring and summer knitting project. I have good memories of knitting it while hanging outside with my little corgi and my husband, and yeah, I find myself wearing it a lot. It's so cozy and squishy and warm and beautiful, and yeah, I love it. And I feel like it was such a labor of love that it's very, very special, and I'm very pleased to have it in my wardrobe. I like this question. It was a little bit different. It wasn't like, actually a couple of these questions are like that, where they're not just straight up knitting questions, but getting to know me a little bit more. So this one says, did you go to college? And if so, what did you major in? I did not. I went to trade school to be a hairstylist. And in saying that, I had a really short stint at trade school because the high school that I went to had a cosmetology program that was literally trade school. It had all of the credits, they taught us everything, so I got all of my credits for getting my journeymans as a hairstylist while I was in high school. And then there was a program that I went to, and it was 2 periods that were, I think, combined 5 months, and it was like a government program. And so I went to school for 5 months after I finished all of my cosmetology schooling in high school, and they basically did like a crash course on everything I had learned, made sure I knew what I was doing and I was doing everything correctly. And then I did all of my trade school, like government Red Seal exams while I was there. And after that 5 months, I had my journeyman certificate as a hairstylist. I had my Red Seal as a hairstylist. I believe Red Seal is only a Canadian thing for trades, but it allows me to work in any province in Canada as a hairstylist. And yeah, that's what I did. I worked for 8 years in the same salon, and it was wonderful, and I miss it. I miss the people. I had some very close co-workers. I had some very close clients, so I definitely do miss it, but I love where I am now, and I love my life, and I love my husband, and I love my dog, and our home, and yeah, it's weird not doing it anymore, but it's good. I'm happy where I am. How did you meet your husband, and when did you guys get married? Did you have any fun, crafty, or DIY decor for the wedding / reception? My husband and I met in 2016 in a small group at our church. We both joined a small group. We were in the small group together all summer, and then we just kind of kept hanging out after, and that was that. Nothing super crazy. We dated for, well, we knew each other for like a year. We dated for 7 months before we got engaged, and then we were engaged for a year before we got married. And yeah, it was great. We got engaged at Lake Louise in Banff. I love the photos. I knew absolutely nothing about his plan. He totally surprised me. It was very sweet and very wonderful. So yeah, we met in 2016 and got married in 2018 in June. And yeah, did I have any fun crafts or DIY decor? Yes. Unfortunately, this is going to lead into a larger story, but about a month and a half before our wedding, I was in a really major car accident and I broke my collarbone and my arm and suddenly could not help with crafting for the wedding because I was just putting my efforts into healing. So we did have crafts. My lovely mom and my sisters and my sisters and my one bridesmaid, my sisters were my other bridesmaids, all helped out a lot with crafts. Chris was away working, so he wasn't home to help out a lot, which is fine. But what do we do for crafts? My grandma did all of my flowers. She's a florist, so we did a lot of silk flowers and she did those. I had, maybe I'll see if I can find some photos. We basically made everything except for tablecloths, linens, that sort of stuff. We had a whole bunch of like wooden boxes that we stacked stuff on top of. I'm trying to remember. We handmade, so for our favors, we had a candy bar and we let everyone go and fill up little paper bags full of candy to take home with them if they wanted. And we did make every single one of those little paper bags. I didn't make very many because my arm was still not working terribly great. So my mom did a lot of that. Yeah, I'll pop some pictures in while I'm talking here that I can find that kind of show a little bit of the decor without showing anyone who doesn't want to be on camera. But we did a lot for our wedding. We tried to keep very frugal for it, and so it was fun to craft everything, but it also helped keep the cost down a lot. So yeah, I'm very thankful to all of my lovely family and friends who helped out in a very unpredictable situation. And the wedding turned out great. It was wonderful. When you were in high school, were you crafty or just too busy with sports, clubs, etc.? I play zero sports. I was in zero clubs. I did classical vocal lessons, so I was busy with that. I competed every year for that, but that was only in like the spring. Otherwise, yeah, I was crafty. I kept more busy with the cosmetology end of things, so like styling hair, nails, all that fun stuff. I definitely was more, and still am more interested in the hair end of things, so that kept me busy. Craft-wise, I wasn't really like into knitting or anything at that point. I read a lot. That's something I would really like to get back into, but I read tons, like to the point where I would read books in a day. I would come home from school, and if I wasn't working, I would just sit down on the couch and read a book. That was what I did. So yeah, I have read so many books. Yeah, I definitely want to get back into that some more. I read now on my Kindle quite a bit, and I need to pull it out and keep it around me more often. But yeah, I was always crafty. Like my mom and I and my one sister, I have two sisters. One is very analytical and she's a computer scientist, and so she has not nary a crafty bone in her. But my mom and my other sister were all really crafty, so we would do things here and there when we weren't busy. But yeah, in high school I read a lot more than I crafted, and I just kept busy with cosmetology and hairstyling. That's the same thing, but yeah. Nope, that's about all I did. I like this one. What made you start yarn dyeing? My husband. I was always like interested in it. Once I got sucked into the world of indie dyed yarn and all of that, it always interested me. But I was never brave enough to start it myself. But my husband, partially because he loves a good deal, and he was like, you can dye yarn for yourself and it will be cheaper. But also because I think he knows me, and he knew that I missed doing hair and that creative outlet, and you'd be shocked how similar dyeing yarn is to coloring hair. So I think he knew it would be a good outlet for me in that way, but he also just knew that I would be good at it, and I'm very good at doubting myself, and he's very good at making me not doubt myself. And so he pushed me and he pushed me and he pushed me, and he kept saying, Amanda, you just gotta try it, you gotta try it. And so eventually I ordered the stuff for it, and it sat in the basement for ages, and he kept pushing me and saying, Amanda, you have to try it. You'll be really good at it. I know you'll be really good at it. And even if you aren't, what are you gonna lose? It'll be something fun that you get to try and do. And yeah, so I dye yarn honestly 90% because of Chris. So I'm very thankful for him, and that he's my biggest cheerleader. He knows that I can do things and pushes me to do them even though I may not want to. That got me into it, and I love it now. I love coming up, like looking at test knits or projects that I want to work on and dreaming up colors that I want those to be in and then creating them, and it's just really, really fun for me. So I love dyeing yarn, and I'm very thankful he pushed me to get started. So I left this question to the end because I didn't know how I wanted to answer it, but I think I've come up with an answer that answers well enough while still keeping personal things personal, I guess is the best way to put it. So a lot of people asked, how often do I knit? Is Birch & Lily full-time? Do I have a job? Like, what's going on with that? I do not work. I won't get into reasons why, but my husband and I both decided that I would not work, and so I do not work. So I have a lot of time to knit. I also volunteer a lot at our church. I am there at least once or twice a week helping the staff out and keeping stuff running. Doing probably the stuff that they don't want to do with children's ministry and all of that stuff. I prep the coffee bar and all those fun things. So I volunteer and do that, and I love that because it feels like a job to me. I do the test knitting because I love it and it feels like a job to me. And then yeah, I dye yarn on the side. It's nothing big. It is not I would not call it my job. It's just a fun little side hobby that I do, and yeah, so I have a lot of knitting time. I also am very good at taking knitting everywhere with me. If I am waiting for something to cook in the kitchen, I am knitting. If I am at a friend's house and we're just hanging out, they know I'm gonna be knitting. If I'm watching TV, I'm knitting. I bring it everywhere. I definitely am really conscious about sneaking every little moment into my day that I can knit, and yeah, I'm very thankful for it. I am very thankful that I have the opportunity to knit as much as I can and to create as much as I can, because that's what keeps me happy and that's what keeps me sane. And yeah, so yes, I am not currently working, and we will leave it at that. I don't want to get into it too much, but yeah, I have lots of time to knit. So all of you that are like, oh my goodness, you knit so fast. I think I do knit fast, but I also have a lot of time to knit. So that is that answer. And we will end with a question that I apparently missed. There's a couple different questions like this as well, but what does your process look like for developing and dyeing new collections and colorways? And where does your color inspo come from? So I guess I kind of touched on that, getting into all the test knitting stuff. A lot of times these days will have a test knit coming up, have a color in mind, and I always kind of have a couple different collection or theme ideas stewing in the back of my head. And so a lot of the times I'll have a test knit come up, I'll kind of have a couple ideas of colors that I would like that garment or that item to be in, and then I'll go through those couple collection ideas in the back of my head, find something that works, and go from there. So for the Parent Trap collection, for example, the very first colorway I developed for that was the color I used for my Mayberry sweater, and I decided I wanted the sweater to be like a nice red brick rusty sort of color, and I had the idea of doing a Parent Trap collection in the back of my mind. And what is the most iconic thing I would say that everyone knows from the Parent Trap? Lindsay Lohan. And Lindsay Lohan has red hair. And so it wasn't like the most creative idea in the world, I guess. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was the most creative idea in the world, but that sparked me to then go and watch the Parent Trap a couple times and pull stuff from it and pull some more ideas from it. And then it grew from there, and I pulled inspiration photos. I have aphantasia. I can't see things in my mind, but I'm really good at taking something that's in front of me and recreating it. So say I'll pull a photo of Hallie and Annie from the Parent Trap, and I look at their hair and I say, okay, I can pull this color from it and this color from it and this color, and I just kind of start putting them on top of each other. I know my color theory, so I know what colors mix well and what don't. Thank you, hair school. So then that kind of helps me with placement and stuff, but I'll have an idea of how I want the colorway to look too. Like, do I want it to be a tonal? Do I want it to be variegated? Do I want it to have speckles? Do I want it to be more watercolory? And I kind of just go from there and I play. I have mistakes. I have oopsies. I actually have quite a few oopsies lined up for another Happy Little Accident update later in the year. That probably won't be for a couple months though. But yeah, I just play and I go from there. But yeah, I have a really hard time coming up with a colorway. Like, say I wanted to make a colorway based off of, we'll go with a robin. It's the first thing that's popping into my head. I can't do it from the top of my head. I need to have a photo in front of me. If I tried to make a colorway based off of a robin, I couldn't tell you what it looks like. I need a photo. So I'm very visual in that way, and I need photos in front of me to figure stuff out, and then I just kind of go from there. Yeah, I'll kind of try and pull things too that I know will be cohesive and work well together. I like to make sure that every color has at least like one buddy, like one other colorway in the collection that it will pair nicely with as well. And yeah, it's a lot of trial and error and playing and having fun. But I love it. Like I said, it's a lot like coloring hair, but with all the fun colors. That's what I always tell people. Here is a lot of blondes and browns and auburns, and this is like full-on like crazy vivid colors. So it's really, really fun, and I like it. And again, I am very thankful that my husband pushed me to do it, because it's fun to just go down in my basement and play and see what I come up with. So I think that is all the questions I had. That's about all I have for time to film, so it's gonna have to be all the questions that I had for this video. Like I said, always, if you have other questions, you can leave them down below in the comments. I love talking to you guys and chatting and just enjoying the community that we have created here on my YouTube channel. It really means a lot to me. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do so. You can hit that like button down below as well, and the notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. Make sure you keep an eye here on YouTube and Instagram for all of the colorway reveals for the new collection on October 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And I will see you next week for a regular podcast episode. Bye!